I do still feel this music. So how does track sounds like in IT? We will discover it in the next, I believe, in 60 minutes. So welcome everybody. Friday Dose, the Backup Monster Show. I'm your host, Paweł Mączka, and with me, I have a special guest today, Dave Russel from Veeam. Hi, Dave.
Hey, good to be with you today.
Yeah, how is going? I know it's a not a little, but early morning your time. What exactly you have?
No,
What
it's
time you
not
have?
bad. Not bad at all. It's 5 a.m. now. So we've got some coffee, we've got some guitars tuned up. We are ready to go.
Yeah, great to hear that. We'll have some. If you will stay with us for the long hour, believe me, we'll try to do something crazy. So we'll try to jam, and we haven't prepared yet, and we don't know how we're playing, what we are playing. So it will be actually a really jam session tonight. Um, so first of all, I would like to thank you that you came really early. Hopefully, an early bird, so it's not a problem for you.
Yeah, all good, definitely.
All good. And our topic right now, because we both work in a data protection field, so definitely I would like to deep dive. How the backup and recovery market looks like nowadays. But definitely, I will first and we'll deep dive how it looked in the past, because we know each other for a few years. We have first met when you've been in Gartner.
Yep.
And we started a Storware. Right now you holding the position as a VP and this in a strategy at Veeam. Exactly, yes.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Yeah,
uh,
so it's been an interesting ride. The more things change, the more they stay the same, huh?
yeah, yes. So, same here. First question: Why your table is not green and yellow? Why you choose like yellow one?
Yeah, I like yellow. My Jeep is yellow, bumblebee color, kind of yellow and black. This was always my favorite Van Halen guitar, the Bumblebee. But I've got a green computer, so that's close.
Okay, great. So we'll talk about the guitar later on. But how many of them are on the wall right now?
Right now, I've got, let's see, two, four, six, eight on the wall, one in a shop that's usually on the floor, and then two acoustics. I just put the green acoustic on the wall since I've got this guy ready to go for later.
Yeah, beauty. So my friends saying that I'm crazy because I had three of those, but right now I feel much more comfortable when I see your wall of guitars. So definitely I will use I will use your wall as a representation, and I will definitely show my wife in which direction I should go. So plus
There you go.
five without a problem.
That's right.
Like I said, I would like to come back into the past, because we have right now, of course, 2022, and many things change rapidly. Actually, in the last few years, Dave. But let's come back. Let's come back like 20 or 30 years into the data protection markets. So let's imagine right now Dave Russell in the mid 90s, and you are talking about how the data protection market looks like. Uh, how was that? Yes. So let's try to imagine. Yes, you are in
Yeah,
the HS. You're in the video market without knowing that the DVD will comes.
exactly. Yeah, exactly. Things were so much more manual then. I would say things were more brittle, meaning that you had to have agents. You had to oftentimes refresh agents, which you would hear large companies say, we just barely got done with rolling out the last round of agents, and now someone's made an update. So it was much more difficult. There wasn't agentless technology. Reporting was oftentimes much more of a problem, and just trying to complete within the backup window was a constant struggle.
Mhm. Yeah, everybody said about, okay, we need to go and keep our backups in 18, 12 hours.
Right.
And what technology you most reckon from that time? Yes, so mid 90s.
Yeah, well, it's definitely very tape-based, very tape-centric, and certainly not to say that there's a problem with tape. I still have a LTO cartridge behind me here. It still has its place, but the challenge was just the economics. You couldn't afford to hold data for too long. You definitely couldn't afford to hold data on fast access like your faster disk drives. Everything had to go to tape. You maybe only could afford couple of weeks of retention. So maybe you had monthlies, maybe you had quarterlies, but if you called me up and I was the help desk and you said, I need something from 16 days ago, I might say, I don't have that. I can go back 14 days or a month or 2 months or a year.
And what changed after the tapes? What trends you then seen in the mid-90s? Or it was only about the tapes itself?
Yeah, in the mainframe world, we started to incorporate, much more disk, although only for a short period of time, right? We basically treated disk like a cache. It was only going to be resident on disk for a day or two, typically. And then in the open systems world, it was 100% tape, in the Unix environments. And there were challenges there because literally the tolerances of the mechanical engineering was such that if you wrote a tape on one machine, you might only be able to read it on that tape drive. Everything had to be fine-tuned from a head alignment perspective. So not an anti-tape statement by any stretch, but it was just the state of the art it was very mechanical. So think about like a sports car, but a sports car that breaks down a lot. You have to keep fine-tuning it. And of course, when you go to restore, that's the worst possible time to realize there's a mistake or there's some special thing that I need. I can't bring it to this system. I have to go back to the original system I wrote the tape on. And of course, the problem that some people had with tape is the tape was in the same room. Like my example over here, the tape cartridge was in the same room as the server or nearby, too close. So that exposed them to some problems potentially.
Yeah, and imagine that we still have this kind of the capabilities, but taking the offsite, building the disaster recovery based on a tape, it was a quite expensive cost because you need to put more man-days to the people who operate the tapes, but also invest in a transport the tapes between the sites or between the countries. So. Actually was a few specialized companies only for offloading and taking the offsite the tape between the locations.
Yeah, no, that's absolutely right. And in fact, speaking of some of the cost or challenge, let's say if it was like 1995, my wife and I would have been at IBM working on mainframe backup, and essentially bare metal recovery or BMR for a mainframe system had to be custom designed for each system, meaning it had to have the exact patches, no different than what we experience, say, in a Windows environment where you have to have the right device drivers and everything else. But literally, if a major company somewhere around the world went down, we would have to go into our Tucson, Arizona site, cut a tape with that exact image, buy a first-class ticket going out of the Tucson International Airport to wherever it might be, maybe over to Poland. So obviously it's going to be multiple hops with the instructions, deliver this package with this stack of tapes to this company address via courier as soon as you can. And that could take obviously a couple days before that arrived to you. And you might be hard down for 24, 48, maybe even longer hours.
Imagine right now that we're designing the backup and recovery system, and you're saying that at least you need to between 72 and 96 hours before we'll start the disaster recovery operation. I think nobody would like to hear this kind of the sentence these days. Yeah, so it changed rapidly, the access to the data, etc. But then we moved to the 2000, and I have on last meeting the Ed Walsh, who was working in Avamar, and Avamar, of course, was one of the first companies who introduced the software deduplication on the market, and the whole dedupe, let's say, trend became to be a standard. So let's a little bit move from the tape to the duplication in like mid 2000.
Yeah.
How you've seen this technology like 20 years ago from the start to today?
It was really a game changer. By that time, 2005, let's say, I'd left IBM and I was at Gartner, and I used to joke by 2006, 2007, if I haven't talked virtual tape libraries and deduplication, it's, by 8 a.m. in the morning, it's probably a Saturday or a Sunday, because just overnight, the number of people that wanted to talk about this capability, this technology, and it wasn't that it was hugely inexpensive, it was still costly, but we went from just being this expensive to now this expensive. It just dramatically improved the options where you could either keep more data on disk or keep data longer on disk, which, if you think about that sort of cache hit notion, that increased your odds of trying to be able to bring it back from disk versus recall it from tape, which could have turned around and issued a recall from another facility, to your point, that a specialized service, that someone in a van in a lockbox might have had to gone out there and get that. And it was really fundamentally shifted the way people thought about backup, and it just gave us so much more options.
And you are a fan of the dedup and VTL appliances, from the start to like these days, because dedup is still with us and it will be in the future. It's right now one of the major capabilities that the vendors should have. But I'm wondering how you see it, because there are different approaches. Each vendor has a little bit different approach to this. One of us using the external VTLs. One of the vendors investing they own the duplication. How you see it, and what is the, let's say, secret key when you talk with your customers these days?
Yeah, to your point, it's a technology you can embed in multiple places in the stack. It could be compressed at the source, from an application perspective, but probably not deduplicated. It can be in the backup software, or it can be down to the target device, or wherever you're initially storing it to. And I think things have changed, because initially it was about just improve the cost of disk. Now what I see, more and more organizations are worried about access for recovery, speed to recovery, because there is a penalty to be paid, meaning the rehydration of the deduplicated material. Depending on how aggressive that data reduction is, it might take more computational power, more memory to be able to rehydrate that data. So you have to think about, are you optimizing for backup window, or you're optimizing for your restoration process? So, and there's not necessarily a right answer. The good news, though, is that technology keeps moving forward. Since this is all really about mathematical computations, the cost of CPU and the cost of memory is improving to where we can throw more resources at the problem, and we're not gated by having to make a lot of trade-offs.
Mm-hmm. And then the next decade, the cloud. And we'll move into our report that we prepared for our audience from the Veeam. But how you've seen the next trend? Yeah, so take this to tape, the duplication in the middle, and then the clouds appears, and everybody's saying, okay, let's move on to the cloud. Let's put my data in the cloud. And I remember, the struggling. Okay, where my data should be right now. In the cloud, on the tapes, or on-prem, in my, let's say, existing VTL or my appliance. So how you've seen the roles of the cloud and importance for the data protection platforms?
Yeah, I really like the cloud in the sense that I think it democratized a lot of the backup and disaster recovery options. If we were a smaller company, we might not have been able to afford our own secondary location, our secondary site. So or at least we couldn't afford it for all of our data, maybe for some of the critical applications. So the cloud instantly allowed us to have a second data center without fully investing in all of that was required. So that was hugely powerful. And in some cases, the cloud became a way that we could fail over unexpectedly somewhere else. In other cases, it just became an offsite target where we essentially just replaced that notion of a courier coming and picking up that tape cartridge and driving down the highway to some other location to safely store it. So when we say the cloud, it's interesting because there's so many different implementations of a cloud, all of which have their value.
Guys, let's show the slide number 6, because in our report prepared by Veeam, we're saying about that the hybrid is a normal here and it will stay. So when you typically talk with your customers about this hybrid approach, what will be the best scenarios for the data protection? So I would like to have few advices from your side. Which path we should consider now or in the near future?
Yeah, so these bars are representing different years of when we polled people. And so the three colors, kind of the lighter shades of green on the left, are what people said they were actually doing in 2020, 21, 2022. And then the right two bars are what they thought they would be doing 2 years in the future last year when we asked them, and then 2 years in the future this year. So the first thing that jumps out is nothing goes to zero, does it? Meaning the physical on-prem still remains. It's shrinking, but kind of stabilizing at around a quarter of the machines. And then physical virtual is about the same. It's not going to zero. It's about stabilizing. But what's rising, of course, is the cloud-hosted workloads, which by as early as next year could be over half at 52% of a data center's average workloads. So right away, we see we can't turn anything off. We still have to protect maybe a couple critical Unix machines on-prem. We have to protect probably hundreds or even thousands of virtual machines on-prem. But we've got to prepare for the reality that more and more, and maybe even the majority of our workloads will move to the cloud. So in some ways, that history lesson that we talked about, how things were a little complex and difficult back in the 90s, they're a little complex and difficult now, meaning data lives in different types and different places.
Yeah, I feel the same, that it was much more easier 15 years ago than nowadays, because
Right?
it was tough in 90s, then it was much more easier in 2000. The story was really nice. So we have agents, we have the legacy platforms, we have a new technology that allows us to store cheaper for the longer terms. And in the last decade, we added a new sources that we need to meet and know each other, like KVM based hypervisors, the HCI like Nutanix hypervisors, the new players in the virtualization world, not only the VMware and a Hyper-V, the cloud providers, and the containers that we'll talk later on. So lots of new stuff, and this is what I see, and this is also where we saw our place as a Storware is to address the new workloads that they appeared, and they are much more stronger in the last years, and then even supposed to be 15 or 20 years ago. What's your, let's say, when you considering these new sources, what are the places and where you see especially the need to address the challenges in the new places that they became a new normal, actually?
Yeah, I think you're exactly right. Meaning, you could almost think we went from this very expansive set of workloads. I mean, I literally was a development manager at IBM on what was then ADSM. We were talking about, should we have a Siemens Nixdorf Unix client, an agent for that to back that up? And the answer was yes at that time. So the world kind of shrank to be, well, it's going to be physical, Windows and Linux predominantly, a little bit of Unix. It'll be vSphere and later Hyper-V. But then all of a sudden, to your point, it started to re-expand out. We had all of a sudden Red Hat virtualization and AHV from Nutanix, and now new kinds of databases. And there's no doubt that there's more and more activity taking place on these new platforms. They're being deployed for mission critical applications. And not to say that SQL Server and Oracle are going away entirely, because they're not, but the growth and where a lot of experimentation and rapid development is taking place are on different kind of hypervisors, different kind of databases, many of them starting to be cloud native instead of lifted and shifted to the cloud.
Mhm. And let's right now see from the backup trend report, the slide number 12. And I like it because you're saying here that everything is important. So
Yes.
about the not only the sources that we would like to protect, but there are a few major things like continuously or every 15 minutes. You think that the customers right now are so demanding that they would like to have a best RPOs and RPOs here?
Yeah, this is amazing to me, because what you see here in the green bars are, quote, normal applications. And normal is just however you and your business define normal. And in the gray kind of bars are high priority applications. And just right away, even before you look at the legend on the left-hand side, meaning like continuously at the top to your point, or going down at the bottom to every 12 to 24 hours, just your eye notices that there's not a huge difference between the expectation for normal and high priority applications anymore. So we used to talk about tiered storage and therefore tiered recovery. But what you see is all data is important, and increasingly more and more organizations expect that data to be able to be accessed, restored in shorter amounts of time. So to your point earlier, you're upset if you have to wait. Essentially what the world wants is, ideally nothing to get in their way of access to data. But if something does, they want it to be more like a temporary blip in the power. It just, the lights flickered, but everything kept going. So that's near continuous, really. And while 100% continuous data protection may not be vital for all data, certainly the expectation is for any kind of file, for any kind of application, I'm not going to have to wait very long to get access to that. I am not going to experience a major service outage.
Mm-hmm. And so we are so let's move and how to prepare existing customers for the future, because we've seen the huge changes, many of the new sources, and the way and the aggressive, let's say, demandings. Let's take honest. 15 minutes, it's not a long time.
Yeah.
I remember that for the 15 minutes, if you would like to build the platform that it will gives you the availability for the 15 minutes, 10 or 15 years ago, you need to pay the millions of the dollars to get this kind of the functionality. But right now, if it's a new reality, how existing customers should be prepared from the future, especially if we see still a massive growth of data. And I believe if we have this kind of the demandings, how to cope with it, and what should be the best technology or the way of usage of this technology to have it, especially in our field, so in data protection.
Yeah, the reality for most of us is that we're going to have resource constraints. We won't have enough money or enough people, administrators, or enough of solid state flash memory or whatever resource we've got. And of course, now it used to be easy to say, well, money could solve all the problems. Meaning if I had a bigger IT budget, I could go and get faster networking or faster servers or more flash, reduce my reliance on slower access devices. But what we've seen in the last couple of years with supply chain issues is even if you have the money and you go to a vendor and say, I want to buy all of these things, they might tell you, I can get that to you in 6 months or 8 months. So the reason I mention that is that most of us are going to have to think about a best fit scenario. What can we do with the capabilities and infrastructure that we have? And how does that match up to our data profiles? So let's make sure the most important applications get the best of whatever service we can provide. So that might mean we do look at continuous data protection, or we look at storage array snapshots. But for other aspects of our data, like my documents file on Windows, that might be something that gets traditional agent-based or agentless backup and recovery going over a network stored on disk. So if I were to kind of wrap all that up, you've got to look at what do you have available. It's almost like playing a game of chess, right? You're trying to get as much data as you can in the shortest amount of time with the pieces or capabilities that you have. And those are changing maybe depending on your resources, your budget, supply chain constraints, things going on in your business with new applications spinning up or spinning down, while simultaneously the organization may be moving more towards a cloud native environment.
Let's right now put the slide number 16, because it's exactly showing what just Dave said. And I'm quite, conclusion is, for me, it's quite simple and, to be honest, awkward, because you will have a lack of something, lack of the people, proper staff, lack of money, or lack of enough resources due to the last 2 years problem with the chains and getting, for example, new hardware. So how do you see if it's more right when you're talking about the technology part and the platforms that we should provide to the end users or the partners? You see more the problems with the staff itself and the customers asking about the simplicity of using the product itself, or they would or they don't see the problem here, but they would like to have let's say, more cheaper software. How to find the gold rule when we speak with most of the customers worldwide?
Yeah, that's a good question, because if we had this conversation literally just 3, 4, 5 years ago, I would have said people probably would have been the greatest challenge as it relates to backup and recovery and disaster recovery. You didn't have enough people with enough skill or capabilities to do everything that you wanted to do. And people are still a problem, as we know. I mean, we see this in our everyday lives. Restaurants can't get enough staff to be able to operate as fully as they might want to. But now, where I think, our companies can come and help is to overcome technical debt, to provide software solutions that allow them to get the most out of the infrastructure that they have deployed, that allow, ideally, the staff that they do have to operate more easily, manage more data. So if you think about, to your point earlier about data growing, and obviously that's not going to change, then we want to have the ability to take the staff that we've got and leverage them, allow them to be able to manage more data, allow them to be able to get data back or make it available in shorter amounts of time. That's where innovation has to come into play. And some of that obviously will be hardware innovation, things like deduplication, flash memory, the existence of the cloud. But it's really going to be around the software solutions that enabled people to get the job done.
And we've seen that to keep a good specialist is right now really important, and it's quite heavy for the companies to keep the existing team for the longer time, because we are everywhere worldwide, lack of specialists, and the specialists moving from one company to the another.
Yeah.
So it's good to have proper procedures and a proper software that will help you to manage everything in case of the changes the operators or the administrator itself. But like I said, right now I feel that it's much more difficult, because when you're touching the containers part, the cloud part, the on-prem virtualizations, and the typical legacy old OS level data protection, I'm wondering if we will not come back to to the old days, like we as a vendors, we will provide the one platform, but the specific divisions will work separately on this let's say, data islands, that they are specialized in the way how we, for example, attach or protect the data. Let's right now have as an example the containers. They are totally different world than the typical virtualization on the physical world. But of course, what we've seen and what I personally see is that, and even Gartner's right now saying that the future will be not containers, not virtual machines, but the converged technology. So long story short, we as a vendors would like to keep everybody in one place, but I'm wondering if it's possible for the longer term to keep everyone in the same, for example, console, or we will come back to building the specialized islands of the specialization and the access to this data. I would like to know your opinion about it. How do you see it?
Yeah, I can see it playing out in both directions, meaning from a centralization perspective, that assumes that you've got management and tools, technology that can handle all of the workloads for all of the different business units in the way that they want to consume that. The kind of positive case for that is that the cost of it, high-speed infrastructure continues to improve, capabilities continue to improve. So maybe that notion of a monolithic centralized repository and management can ultimately become successful. I tend to think probably not. There are always going to be exceptions. There's legacy exceptions, and then there's forward-facing exceptions, meaning we think about iSeries, we think about mainframe, ZOS, we think about, legacy Unix. Those things aren't going away. And if there's an application on there, they're mission critical. So that's another reason why it won't disappear. However, that's very difficult to centralize with an open system. And now when you say open system, that means so many different things, right? It could mean some of the AHV or new KVM kinds of hypervisors. It could mean MongoDB running on AWS or somewhere else. So that notion of maybe becoming federated and then having the protection spread out and optimized for the specific workload or that business unit, but somewhere in between, more like a mesh. There's some level of up top oversight, but it might be right tool for the right job, right task, depending on your workload, your system underneath it, unless you can handle this one size fits all approach that we're trying to do today, where whatever the system's providing you is good enough for most of your applications. But if you're really trying to optimize things, improve things, that's when you probably have to break it out and specialize.
Yeah, because, I am still struggling and see when I speak with my customers or partners, shall we go to take all of the workloads into the one place, or shall we be a dedicated island for the specific platforms? I see it as a Storware, as a like OpenStack island. They have a totally different way how they do the thinking about the business continuity.
Yes.
The guys from the containers world, they don't want to hear about the data protection because they designed to have stateless operations. We know each other that in the end it's not possible, because there will be always some persistent volumes, and you will have kind of the containers that will keep a data that we should be protected from the business perspective. But this is my personal thinking right now and thoughts that I'm sharing with you, is if the market in 5-10 years will be try to consolidate everything into the one place, or it will be decided that okay, it's totally different world, so let's keep the specialization. It's actually the question to us, like companies, in which direction we will go and where we will find our, let's say, the sweet spot.
Yeah, and that's the classic challenge between centralization versus decentralization, and we sort of ebb and flow back and forth over time. But I think there's no getting around the fact that while we're not turning off or decommissioning systems entirely, so therefore they've got a lot of legacy to deal with, that treating those potentially one-off is deemed to be okay. It's acceptable, meaning if I have a different backup solution for AS400 or I-Series, that might be okay compared to what I do for KVM or what I might be doing now for cloud native workloads. And oftentimes when I talk to customers, they'll say, "Can you help me with this legacy platform?" And it's difficult because you want to say yes to everything, of course, but you have to make a trade-off. You have to make a choice, right? To is what you're saying, the business bet that you're making about where things are going. So I use the phrase now, I would like to help you with that I-Series problem, but I'm more interested in trying to build a bridge forward to your future rather than a bridge that holds you back on the past. You've got other solutions or other capabilities to back up that platform. And if it really comes down to it, I'll have the conversation of, is I-Series strategic to you in 10 years? And they almost always will say, well, no, we don't plan to be on that in 10 years. In fact, we had hoped to be off of it by now. Well, exactly. And in 10 years, I hope to be able to be where you're headed. I want to be ahead of you, not helping you when you're looking backwards.
Yeah, and this is the question, so where we will be in a 10 years, and what technology will actually rule the world. You will always find some legacy platforms and the old systems. And like you said, there are already specialized vendors who started their journey in the 90s, and they're doing it in a really good,
Right.
proper way. But the question is, where will be as a market and our customers in a 5-10 years? So what's your pick? What do you bet? Which workload will be the most common, and how you see where actually also Veeam investment will goes?
Yeah, it's hard not to bet on the cloud. And it won't be lift and shift. It'll be cloud native, born in the cloud. If you talk to smaller organizations, like if this was our 2-person company, literally our quote data center might be a few laptops, a few servers, maybe a printer. Everything else would have been software as a service. We were storing data, writing applications in the cloud. If we're a large business, the CIO would tell you, I don't want to be in the real estate business. I don't want all this land. I don't want all these facilities. I don't want to have to pre-purchase servers, storage, networking, and have all the cabling and facilities management, cooling that goes along with that. I'm in the business of just providing an outcome, not of being essentially my own factory to deliver that. So especially in a 10-year time frame, I think cloud will be extremely pervasive. We'll move from being rack and stack people on-prem to the management layer, really oriented towards achieving those business outcomes. It's not so different than what we do today if you think about it, meaning many of us still work remotely. Some, especially in the pandemic, we had to work from home, but we were able to do it. We were able to remotely manage. And so I think that's a good analogy where instead of remotely managing what was on-premise capabilities, we'll remotely manage what are cloud native capabilities.
Yeah, I'm just looking for one page that I would like to also show, because let's go to the page number 7, because this is also the demandings, what is based on the report, what is actually driving the change, and what are the requirements for the backup vendors today. Because like you said, the cloud will be with us. The question will be how much aggressive the containers will rule the world. This is what I see. Everybody's talking about it, but it's still minority of its usage, like few percent, like 5-10%. It will grow in the next years, but it's not that it will replace the virtual workloads which still dominating the markets. So I'm not asking if you will keep the presence there, because it's obvious from me. But let's take this importance of for the data protection vendors. What's actually it's important to you, and what will be actually drive a change in the next years? So let's forget about the technology itself, but the feature or the business side, where the business will put us as a vendors to do it.
Yeah, that's a great question. So, the last 3 years we've been asking this specific question: what would drive you to change your backup solution? And I should point out, this is the industry's largest ever report at almost 3,400 organizations from 28 countries. The prior year was 3,000 at organizations, which at that time was the largest report in the history of the industry. And so we've got now 3 years and a lot of data to suggest that what people are really looking for, what would make them change, is first and foremost, I need to be able to meet my service level agreement as expressed by recovery point or recovery time objectives. And the challenge with that we saw earlier is that more data is being deemed mission critical or important. And the expectation for all data is that I won't have to wait very long to get access to it. So meeting those SLAs every single year becomes more and more difficult because the SLAs keep rising. And there's an old joke: you can't restore that which you haven't backed up. It all begins once you get the backup copy from our perspective. So that number 2 pain point there of what would really drive me to change is to improve the reliability or success rate of my backups. And that's challenging because we're creating more data. We're trying to store it in maybe multiple different types of locations. So all of these things are now combined with, really, if you add up a few of them on the chart here, it's about economics, just expressed in a few different ways. So if I had to kind of wrap that up, I would say organizations first and foremost need to meet their objectives, their service level agreements. They're needing to make sure they get a good, proper backup so that they can restore and make data available when they need to. And they have to do it in a way that they can afford. So those 3, cost, capability, and the ability to get that data back when you need it to meet the service expectation, those are the challenges. And that's what I see people pushing the vendors to provide.
And the last thing, what I noticed, and I would like to deep dive with you, is the cybersecurity threats and the way how it affects us and our customers, because I believe it's also changing, drive us as a vendors to make changes in our platforms to make a life easier in case of, for example, ransomware. If we go to the 21st slide, we will see that the report that you prepared, and I'm glad to hear that this is the biggest one that is, I believe, available for everyone. If you could say a few words how to access it, the report.
Yeah, absolutely. So it is freely available. You can go to VEE.am/DPR22. That just means Data Protection Report 222 for the year. You can register there, download it. And I always encourage people to get informed. It's not a vendor commercial. It's not about Veeam. It's about the industry, the trends going on in the industry. And in many cases, it can help provide you the ammunition you need to speak to your boss in the IT community about why you're looking to do certain changes or invest in certain things. So it's always a good idea to get as much research, as much capability and understanding as you can about the world. But the biggest thing I think the report does is it helps people understand they're not alone in what they're thinking. They're not alone in the challenges that they're experiencing.
So let's go next one in 22 slides, because I would like to find this ransomware thing. And yeah, I do confirm this is a great material, and we need to have this awareness what's going on, and that this problems is not only for my country or my existing company. that you can. It's a great representation for the, like you said, for the boss, for the management to speak and move about the investment, because we knows that the data is the 21st century oil, and we knows that we cannot lose the business continuity. And in most cases right now, the ransomware and the other malwares make our lives harder. So let's just deep dive, and I would like to get your opinion how you see how the cybersec division correlates to the data protection vendors these days, and how it will correlate in the near future.
Yeah, I think the good news is we're making progress. Meaning we're getting more and more appreciation from a security perspective that backup and recovery, disaster recovery has a vital role to play. And unfortunately, the kind of bars in the middle here, what that's showing is when we asked in this specific case, it was about a little over 1,300 organizations that said, I have knowledge of our cyber threat and our ransomware experience. And only 1 out of 4, 24% said, I don't think that we got hit. Now, it could be that 24% just weren't aware of that they actually did suffer an attack in their organization. But still, that means 76% of the organizations said that they had at least one or more successful ransomware infiltration in the last year. And the two highest concentrations were that 23% someone experienced 2 successful ransomware attacks in the last 12 months. And then 19%, or 1 out of 5, said they experienced 3. So we use this phrase that it's not a matter of if, but a matter of when. And this is actually showing that to be true. These are bad odds. If you were to go gambling and I told you, hey, put your money down, but 76% of the time you're going to lose. Those are poor odds. So we have to be prepared. So the positive that I see, though, is that going forward, backup and recovery is viewed as a critical component of your ransomware cybersecurity ability to withstand those events. And hopefully that allows us to get more investment to overcome some of the technical debt, some of the challenges that we experienced in the past.
And do you think this our responsibility as a backup vendors to help customers to come back in case of the ransomware? What do you think, where it should be, our obligation to help? And what should be the role of the data protection platforms when we're talking about the integration with the security? Because what I notice is that more vendors right now even starts to speak not with the typical storage division, but they start the conversation from the security division. So I'm just want to get your personal opinion here.
Yeah, I think it's almost completely intertwined. It's inseparable. Meaning, if you think about why we've historically backed up, it's that we were only going to restore data maybe 3 to 5% of what we backed up. We never typically, unless there was a major hurricane or some kind of event, we didn't usually have to be concerned about bringing back 100% of the data. It was 3 to 5% of whatever we backed up. We didn't know which 3 to 5%. We didn't know when, so that's why we tried to back up everything. But cyber changes all that. Now, all of a sudden, ransomware says that we could potentially have to restore 100% of our data, and we may not even have any early warning. Like some of the natural disasters, typhoons, hurricanes, we can see coming maybe days, weeks in advance and try to prepare. There is no preparation or early warning trigger oftentimes from a cyber threat. The moment we understand it's there, we've been infected, and we're quickly trying to remediate. But that remediation can bring back 100% of the data if we're not successful in containing it. So which conversation should we lead with? Should we lead with backup? Should we lead with cyber? I almost view them as one and the same. We're protecting data and we're making data available. And, thank goodness that it's a low frequency event that we're going to have a natural disaster, but it's a high frequency event, or at least high probability, that we're going to have a cyber infiltration. So I still think leading the conversation around availability is positive, but speak to both sides. We used to say that backup was like insurance. The problem is insurance is easy to say, well, maybe I don't have to have it this year, or maybe I don't have to have insurance for everything. I think cyber changes that conversation. Ransomware changes that conversation because it is very threatening. It's very real. It's not something that you can say, I elect not to do that this year. Maybe I'll do it next year, because you could be out of business next year if 100% of your data gets encrypted.
And and we do not talking about. We don't need to imagine that the threat can be abroad. Imagine that what I have right now, even staying in Poland, the situation on the Ukrainian. So you can, in a daily basis, you can change. It can change everything. Yes. So it's not a matter when, but how we should be protect against the real war or the cyber war, because right now it's really hard to differentiate the difference, because it's going both sides at the same time. But I really liked your opinion that you said that we shouldn't differentiate the security part from the data protection. In the end, both teams are doing and protecting the data. All right now, and I think it's time to say about some craziest hobbies that we do in both of us. So let's come back to the guitars and small challenge, because I'm thinking about how to lead our jam session. I would like to keep more you than myself here, because you are the guest. But let's imagine the ransomware attack. What type of the note you would like to put on your guitar when you have this kind of this scenario? You have a data center, the ransomware is coming, and let's try to design the song about it. What kind of the tune you will be playing when you think about them? That your data will be encrypted like in 5 or maximum 10 minutes. Well, let's try.
Boy.
Yeah. let's get some fun. So we promised. And after the session, you will hear our Storware band called Bear Machine, and we have a clip called In Backup We Trust. So I would like to also emphasize that when you looking for the vendor in a data protection, looking for the people and for the solution that you can trust, not for a month or from the POC perspective for the first year, but looking for the trustful vendor who can help you in the next decade or so. Even and look for the agility for the vendors, because it's important to do not see what we have right now, but how we agile to the existing challenges and for the future. And this what Dave said. It's really important to understand not only your perspective, but from the report that the Veeam showed us, and it's available on a Veeam site. And what we spoke today, try to speak with your existing management about not your only problems, but see how the market is, where the market is, and always choose the proper solution that will solve the problem, not only from the economical point of view, but it will get build you a safe zone in case of any data loss. So a few words from myself as a summarize of our session, and come back to your ransomware attack. Do you have a note in your mind right now, Dave?
Yeah. And by the way, I have to say, I love the video that you're going to show, Backup We Trust. It's a great video, really fun, really enjoyable. But ransomware, that's ransomware.
It's like,
That's the sound
Van
of
Halen Matrix style. So
that's the sound of your data going far away, being encrypted.
okay. And how about the restoration of the data? How it goes here? Nice. So your favorite band? Your favorite band, Dave?
Van Halen.
Van Halen. So can you play something from the Van Halens from the 80s, I guess? My personal, I will not go in this direction like you, but I'm trash. So Slayer, but I will not play Slayer because I will kill most of the fans. But from the 80s, of course, the Master of Puppets and the Metallica here. So,
Nice.
so
Outstanding.
definitely the 80s. What will be the next band?
Who? What would be the next band? Well, I'll go like really classic rock.
Okay, this is one of the songs that we played. It's called Kingdom from the Super Acoustic section. So this is one of my bands. So let's try to use this riff as a major riff. Come on. Okay, I will start to play the major riff. I don't know if it will be something here on the live, but let's try. It's how many miles we are? I think few thousand, yes.
Yeah, many thousands.
Yeah, many thousands. All right, so Dave, so I will just shut down my guitar, and if you could spend and take like no, do not take the guitar off. So one of your, let's say, favorite songs that you play when you would like to relax. So if you could share some thoughts and the insights, what relax you, I will be more than appreciate here.
Wow, I do like Van Halen. I like early Van Halen, Van Halen 1. This is a fun song, in my opinion. Okay, so this is Feel Your Love Tonight.
I love this song. What I will promise when we'll do the post promotion and we'll play with the file that we just recorded, I will add some original sentence from the clip from the Van Halen. So I promise that I will play with it. So we will add some track here.
Oh, good fun. Awesome.
So definitely when hopefully we'll see each other somewhere face to face, not in the digital. So I would like to grab some few beers and listen to Van Halen, both of us. And I will prepare my list here.
Outstanding. Yeah, I look forward to that day. I hope it comes very, very soon, and I'll buy the beer.
Yeah, outstanding. So Dave, definitely I would like to thank you from the whole team of Storware to be available in early morning for all of the audience. You can watch us right now on a LinkedIn, but afterwards it will be available on a YouTube. So if you will have any more questions regarding our today conversation, do not hesitate to put the comment or to contact me or the Dave. We are quite often on a social media to with the full access for our partners or the customers. And remember that data protection changed like in whole IT infrastructure in the last 30 days. I hope that you enjoyed our episode. We got through how it looks like in the 90s, then go through the 2000. We started with the tapes, moving from the duplication and the VTL world into the modern infrastructures which contain the cloud and containers. And so there was lots of stuff regarding the report that was prepared by Veeam, showing the backup trends. So again, I advise you to download it and to share with your existing management or with your friends if you are working in the data protection. Now, Dave, anything else from your side before we'll put the clip in Backup We Trust?
No, just a huge thank you for having me. It's always a pleasure to chat with you and visit with you. It's great to be able to do this from across the world, but I hope someday soon we can do it in person. I would just echo exactly what you said. Go get the report, get educated on that, look at some other options, ways to improve your business, and just always know, even if you think you've got certain challenges, whether that's money or people or technology, you can always improve something. Just go look about how you can get a little bit better. Every day, if each of us just try to get a little bit better, improve our backup, improve ourselves every single day, we can get where we want to go.
And so kudos to you, Dave. And for those who will just name all of the guitars that are behind the Dave, I'm promised that you will get the Storware hoodie with the backup monster. And I think the Dave will add something from the Veeam side. So challenge accepted. So thank you, Dave, again. Keep in touch, my friend. Keep safe. And right now, we redirect you to the clip which is prepared by the Bear Machine band from the Storware, and the clip is called In Backup We Trust. Have a great day and a weekend, and we will see in May on one of the next episodes where we will have a Piotr Nowosielski from Just Joint IT, and we'll talk more about the recruitment part and how to build a proper culture and how to leadership startups in a different way how you saw in the past. So let's go in the Backup We Trust. Dave, thanks again, and stay in touch, my friend.
Thank you. Look forward to the video.
Cheers. Bye-bye.